morning is things each friendship needs. Things that each friendship needs. You know, it was reported that Howard Hughes, who was in today's time, would be worth $6.6 billion. That's a lot of money, isn't it? But it said that he said, I'd give it all for one good friend. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 18:24 that there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. You know, in John's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 15, Jesus said, I call you friends. It was neat how he said it. It said as he talking to him, he said, I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends. And this idea is not just found in the New Testament, but also is found in the Old Testament. In 2 Chronicles chapter 27, 20 verse 7, it reads that God was a friend of Abraham. How beautiful is that? David and Jonathan had an incredible friendship throughout the Bible. Ruth and Naomi had a great friendship all throughout the Bible and all throughout their lives. But what made the story of Job all the more tragic was that his closest friends and even his wife did not support him as a close friend should have supported him. It was the same with Jesus and the Apostle Paul. Matthew 26:31, Jesus said, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night. Near the time that Jesus needed a friend, he was deserted. When the time that Jesus needed those who he put his whole heart in, he put his life in, they gave their lives to him, they walked with him day in and day out for 3.5 years. But all the people that he surrounded everything with, the 12 closest people, the ones who would from them on carry the gospel all the way to the ends of the earth, all of them deserted him on the night he needed him the most. In at least 2 places with the Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy, Paul said, all those in Asia have turned away. He also said in chapter 4 that he says, at my first defense no one stood with me. Now the secret to friendship, ladies and gentlemen, is building that particular relationship. The secret of friendship is working with that friend, growing that relationship, nurturing that relationship. Proverbs 18 also tells us, a man who has friends must himself be friendly. But keep in mind, he's talking about true friendship here. He's talking about genuine friendship here. He's talking about biblical friendship here, sincere friendship here. Not something done just in order to gain something. Not something done just in order to get something. Folks, there's a lot of that going around today that has been mistaken for friendships, but actually that's the character of an enemy. You know, I didn't work at this particular government place, what I want to share with you here about this business here, but I visited there on a regular basis. And no, it wasn't jail, okay? But I went to this place on a regular basis, but I noticed how this one employee was always with the boss. Every time I went in there, this one employee, every time I'd go in there with them, this one employee was in their hip pocket. This one employee would follow them day in and out and all the time around with them. And there's been times when they were separated and it was just me and the boss, and here comes this employee come running. And not only that, I noticed that every time when I was with the boss, or several times I was with the boss, it had to happen more, but when I was with the boss and they were with the boss, they would bash each and every other employee, all but one. That they would see one coming and they would start on and tear that person down. Another one would come up, they say they're not doing their job and this and this and this, but they would go on and tear that person down. And do you know what? Before it was said and done, the one employee who always followed the boss ended up being the boss. Why is that? Because in time and at the right time, that employee got rid of the boss. See, that's character of an enemy. That's character of an enemy. Not only that, I'm not going to go on to say some other things that I plan on to say, but I do want to say that person today is employed by Southern Baptist Church. You know, someone has defined friendship as meaning the greatest love, the greatest usefulness, the most open communication, the noblest suffering, the severest truth, the heartiest counsel, and the greatest union of minds, of which brave men and women are capable. Now this morning I'm going to share with you, give you 3 things that each friendship / relationship needs. Now yes, that's going to be the message for this morning, but there's one thing I want you to understand about those who you may consider and those who you may count as a friend, but they may actually be your enemy. How do I know that? I've been there. I've been down that road. And I've been where I've really trusted someone with really intimate things, close things that you wouldn't tell, but you thought they were a friend, but they turned around with that and actually realized that they were my enemy. That they were my enemy. You know, if you're with someone and they always are talking about other people, when you're not with them, there's a chance that they're talking about you. And I'm telling you that to be with you and to watch you wherever you go through the day, wherever you're at in life, whoever you're with. And again, this is not friendships, but this is relationships. But number one here is friendships / relationships need communication. They need communication, verses 10 through 12. Number one, I want you to know the first thing here about communication is that communication sees. Communication sees, verse 10. You know, God did not have to talk with Gideon to see that he was still somewhat afraid. Why? Because I shared with you several weeks ago, because God sees the heart. And with that, wanted to offer his comfort. God wanted to encourage Gideon here. He wanted to encourage him. Now, we don't always have to communicate with someone to see what is wrong. But with some, without communication, we'll never see what's wrong. We'll never know what's wrong with them. And we'll never see their need. We'll never know their need. Communication this morning is important. We have to talk to people, and people have to talk to us. It's like when people are being integrated. I mean, when they go out and commit a heinous or horrible crime, however you want to say it. When they go out and do these crimes and they're not able to solve it, they need that person to tell them something. They need that person to communicate with them. And again, to tell them where that person's at. And sometimes when they do this, to get them to communicate, they kind of work out a deal with them. But communication sees things. It opens things. Number 2, communication strengthens. And that's the first part of 11. God said if you go down and you hear what they say, your hands will be strengthened. And you'll be able to go down against the camp. Holman Publishers right here in the Bible I preach out of here, but one of but they say the literal translation for your hands will be strengthened is you shall be encouraged. You know, communication allows us to see. Communication allows others to see, but also allows us to be strengthened. Encouraged by what we hear, and Satan knows this. It's why he doesn't want us to hear the right things, but why he does want us to hear the wrong things. Does anybody remember the show that Touched by an Angel? It used to come on a regular basis, and we still watch it. But the thing about it, I mean, it's an old show, and you pretty much see when you see it, you know that they're reruns. But we were watching one the other night, and I flipped on it, and it talked about this one lady who kind of believed in luck. She was an actress, or however you want to say it, but she was a singer. And it's been a while since I've seen this. I'm going to try to remember it, but she was an actress. And every time before she went out to rehearse, right there in some kind of box, there was some yellow roses. And she believed that those yellow roses helped her sing, helped her perform, however you want to say it. But then on the night of the big opening, the time that she was supposed to sing and sold tickets and all that, when she come out there on that stage, she looked down at that black box as she did every time she performed. And there was no yellow roses. And it affected her so much that she could not perform, and so the runner-up had to go out and perform for her, and she never was able to go forward after that again. But how the story ended is that the lady, the runner-up, knew that. And she intended to do that for on the opening night. It would affect the one that was supposed to sing. And she would step up and take her place. And see, that's one of the things that Satan wants you to hear. That's one of the things that that's one of the things he does. But once we're strengthened, we're able to see. You know, once Gideon heard, folks, he was able to see that even they knew what God was going to do here. Once he heard this, and he says, you know, even they realize that God's going to do this, and it strengthened him. And so that's why it's important to encourage our friends, is so that our friends, listen, will be strengthened. That's why we encourage each other, so each other will be strengthened. God uses us, and God uses us with each other, and with others, and with others, God also uses us. You know, I read something the other day. I'm not even sure where it come from, but it said there are 9 minutes during the day that will make the greatest impact on the child. The first 3 is as soon as they get up in the morning, they wake up. The next 3 is an afternoon as soon as they get home from school. Or it could be when they're finishing school and going on to work. But those 3 minutes there, and the last 3 minutes is before they go to bed. And they said that during those particular minutes of the day, you can make a child feel special, loved, and appreciated. And folks, the reason is because in those minutes you're strengthening. You're talking to them, you're strengthening. So strengthen your friends today. Strengthen those who have relationships with you today. Strengthen each other here in the church. And the last part here is communication supports. The last part, 11 verse 12. You know, I don't know all the reasons why God wanted Gideon to take his servant along with him. But perhaps God knew that when he got near the outpost, or he got right there at the edge of the enemy's camp, the outskirts, the outside, or when coming down, he began to kind of look across that mountain and see all those people. As it says here, that they were numerous as locusts, and that their camels was without number as the sand on the seashore. But perhaps when he knew that, when he'd see that, when he saw that, when he would take that in, that he needed support. Because if you think about it, he never called him any other time. But he specifically said, take your servant Purah and go down. You know, maybe it wasn't because of what his servant would say, but actually where his servant would stand, which is beside him and with him. That itself communicated something there. You know, when you support someone, that says a lot, doesn't it? That says a lot to us. That strengthens, that supports us. That says a lot to us. But even if they're in the wrong, it doesn't necessarily say that they're in the right, but that you're in the right. You know, it's communicating that you may not be supporting their decision, but you're supporting them. You're supporting your friend. You're supporting that relationship. You're supporting that family member. Now, I'm sure everyone has heard about the sentencing of the former woman police officer of Dallas. How she went up, how she mistakenly went in her apartment, she says, and she shot the man in the apartment. Now, their court just it was finally settled and stuff like that. They finally went to court and sentence was passed and so forth. Now, when that first come out, I seen different clips. And I saw some of the family on this side, and some of them were angry. Some of them were really upset. And some of the things they said was pretty rough. And that's what the news was showing. You know how the news shows what they want you to see. Am I right? Okay, and they were showing that side, but then they showed the victim's younger brother on the stand talking. And he come up and he told the woman, he said, I want the best for your life. He said, I forgive you. And he said, the best for your life is giving your life to Christ. And then he went down and he asked for a hug, and he asked a couple times, and finally whoever, the judge or whatever, said, yes, you can. They went, and he didn't even reach her. She come, and they met halfway, and they hugged. And they hugged for several minutes, it was seen. And he would try to back away like that, but she would grab him again. And she knew that she did not necessarily deserve his forgiveness, but she was glad she got it. But then when they went and sat down, the judge left her bench and come out of her, what do you call that, chamber, and come around and give her a Bible. And as she was coming, I heard one media talking about it, and they didn't know what the book was. And then finally one of them said it's a Bible. But then you can hear her showing her John 3:16 and reading it to her. And when she did that, the other one said, what is that? And they finally tacked down what it was. And but basically, one of them, they didn't even know it was a Bible. They didn't know what John 3:16 was, and they had to ask one of the people that were there talking. And finally, one of the commentators, I guess, he said, well, all people playing sports have this verse. And then before it was all said and done, he said, I am floored. He was upset, and several people have got upset by that. But the thing is during that time, she was talking to her about giving her life to Christ. And was talking about how God could forgive her and so forth. All that what was said was said. But folks, that was a beautiful moment. And I know people may have different sides here, but there would be alternative to that. What would be the other way of that? If she didn't do it when everybody wanted justice, when everybody wanted to withhold forgiveness and grace, it would be riots. And folks, it was a bad situation. It was a white cop shooting a black guy. And that could have easily went crazy. Riots going down the street, knocking out windows and hurting other people who were totally innocent. But folks, forgiveness broke everything. Forgiveness changed everything. And folks, I don't know about you, but it was good to actually see something like that on TV, especially on the news. But it was a great demonstration of grace. But they did that. But they were supporting her, not because what she did was right, but because they wanted to do right. Folks, that's what we need to see being communicated today. Freedom of religion is what started our great country. And freedom from religion is what's going to end it. Moving on, number 2, friendships/relationships need closeness. 13. There are 2 reasons that lead us to believe, or led me to believe, that in this particular passage that there was a closeness between these 2 individuals. Number 1 was because he called him companion. And number two is we see him, he would not have told just anybody this kind of dream, but he told someone close to him this kind of dream. He kind of told him what was on his heart. Friendships today, folks, they need closeness. Our friendships today, they need closeness. And what often hurts is when these friendships/relationships is when people are not communicating. When people do not talk about, when people do not share. No matter where you go in the world, even if it's to the remotest remote area, wherever you go, you'll find people who like communication, who like closeness, who want friendships and those kind of things. You see those kind of people with some of the most unusual individuals. See, people today, we're made for this. We're made for this closeness. Even animals like closeness. Think for a minute, if you have the dog in the cage all day, or you have him in the garage or something all day, and then when you come to let him out, that dog is so joyful because they get to see you. Those animals are so joyful they get to see you. But some of the friendships, some of the relationships today that could, should, and would benefit the most do not have this. Folks, a lot of kids are not communicating to the parents today. They come home and they go in their room, or they go and the parents never talk to them, and there's no communication. There's no closeness. With spouses today, there's no closeness. I mean, how many, I've talked to several people and they said he or she will not talk to me. They will not communicate to me. You know, co-workers, that they go to work, there's no closeness with people that there needs to be. Family, relatives, especially people in the church, we need to have closeness. Folks, that's what makes us different from those outside in the world, doesn't it? We need closeness with each other. And knowing that this is where we thrive, folks, the enemy, evil, does all it can to prevent it. Folks, I think one of the triggers that pushes people to the edge of where they go in and do these mass shootings is because there's no closeness. A lot of these people, when you look at them, they're isolated. And they're away from people. They have no closeness with people in the community. And then somehow, and even the FBI agent said that somehow they developed that those are the bad guys. That because they don't have what they have, those are the bad guys. See, there's no closeness, folks. Closeness would prevent that. So people, we're created to connect. Number 3 here, friendships/relationships need care. Verse 14. Upon hearing this dream, his companion somehow knew what it meant. And some think that God put the dream's interpretation in this man's mind, in his thoughts, and he was able to tell what exactly what this dream meant. But what I like to say is that knowing how bad this news was, he still told his friend here the truth. No matter and this even involved him, didn't it? It even involved him, but no matter how bad it was, he told his friend the truth. And folks, that should be the same with us. There's times when something may not need to be said, and it's because we do care. Because what we say is minor things, they're not important, but because we care. But again, if we give that news, it will hurt. But there are other times that something needs to be said, and it's because we do care. We need to tell them, even if it does hurt. You know, we can start in telling them easy and come out telling them easy, but the main thing is that we tell them, we communicate, we care with them. You know, sometimes it may not be with what we say, but what we do. You know, Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, he was the first black man to ever play Major League Baseball. And because of his color, it didn't matter where he went, he was faced with some kind of hardship. It didn't matter what field he went, he was faced with some kind of hardship. But one time he committed an error on a play, and it didn't say exactly what he did, but he committed an error, and the crowd began to ridicule him with racial slurs and insults. And at the peak, and when it got to its peak, he was so humiliated by this. He was so struck down by this. And then a shortstop, Pee Wee Reese, called timeout, and he walked over next to Jackie Robinson, and he put his arm around him until the whole stadium went quiet. You know, Jackie Robinson said that arm around my shoulder saved my baseball career. I mean, was that hard? Of course it was. Doing something that was hard on both ends. That was the first breakthrough. That was the first, somebody had to take the first step, and they took the first step. But because Pee Wee cared, he went with how he felt rather than how everyone else in the ballpark felt. Now, did he face some backlash for that? I'm sure he did. I'm sure from all the way to the end of his career, somebody somewhere ridiculed him. Somebody somewhere yelled at him and did all kind of things against him. But because he cared more about Jackie and less about himself, he done the right thing. Folks, as Christians today, we need to do the right thing. Folks, we need to care when it's hard. We need to care when we don't want to. And number one, how does that start? When we're filled with the love of Christ. and when we're more concerned with Christ and other people than we are by ourselves. That's what the Sunday school lesson hit on today, about self-centeredness. Folks, self-centeredness is wrecking people's lives today. It's wrecking families today. It's wrecking friendships today, business opportunities. It's wrecking churches today because someone's selfish and they have to have things their way. Folks, we have to get out of that. Like I said, you've heard this before, joy, Jesus first, others second, yourself third. We got to get back to that. And we got to care like that. And again, it starts with having our heart filled with Christ. And if we don't have that, we need to come to the altar and ask God for that. We got to say, God, hey, I know this is what you come to this earth to show us. And this is what you had and even displayed on the cross, but it's missing in my life. I don't care about certain people. I don't care if they would leave. Matter of fact, I want them to leave. Folks, that's not right. That's not of God, is it? Or I don't care about these people. I'm leaving them on their own. They can take care of themselves. Folks, that's not caring as Jesus would care. Look what Jesus traded to come to this earth for. Look what He gave up to come to this earth. He come with us, and some of His greatest friends, folks, was tax collectors, was sinners, and all those kind of people. He loved those people, and He was even ridiculed for doing that. He was even criticized for doing that. But friendships, relationships, they need this kind of care. With your friendships, you have this kind of, ask God for this kind of care. Tell someone you love them, but show someone you love them. As we close, in today's lesson, I done alluded to Sunday school, but it said on average, people make 396 friendships in a lifetime. However, only 1 in 12 friendships last. But folks, there's one friend. There's one who not only wants to be your friend, but he wants to be your best friend. Now, it's not a coincidence today that our sign refers to a friend of Jesus. It's not a coincidence today that our Sunday school referred to a friend in Jesus. It's not a coincidence that our hymn today referred to a friend of Jesus, and that the message today referred to a friend of Jesus. It's no coincidence that you're here today. But we've all had times, or I faced times where I felt like I did not have a friend, not one friend in the world. But maybe you feel like that today. And you're saying, truly, Tommy, to be honest with myself, I feel like I don't have a friend in the world today. Well, I got good news for you. You can with Jesus. And folks, when you accept Christ, when you give your heart to Him, He'll be a friend that sticks closer than a brother. He'll be a friend that will walk with you wherever you walk. And that's the thing. Even if you're somewhere that you probably shouldn't be, He'll go with you, or He'll go and get you. Even if you're in a sin that you shouldn't be in. Folks, God will go get you. He'll be there with you. And folks, He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. But folks, He has to be in here before that can happen. You got to give your heart to Jesus. Let Him come and live in your heart. And He's, as Revelation 3:20, He's knocking on the door today. He's wanting to come in. He wants to be your friend today. He wants to be a part of your life when no one else does. So I just want to tell you, however your relationships with friendships is, look, each friendship needs what I shared with you today. They have to have. Now there's other things, yes, but just taking from today's scripture, that's what is there. Work these things in your family. Work these things with your closest friends. Work these things in with your spouse. Work these things in with your siblings. Work these things in with people in your neighborhood. Work these things in the church. Let's work these things with each other. Let's ask God, if one of these things missing in our church, Father, give it, please. Provide it, please. Raise it up, please. We got to have these kind of things. Because we're living in a society as everybody's on the go. And there's no communication. Folks, we have to talk to each other. We have to hear what's on everybody's heart. And we have to care about each other. And folks, we have to draw close to each other. And number one, as we draw close to God, He'll draw close to us. But we need to, and when we draw close to God, we will draw close to each other. And as we draw close to each other, we'll draw, as a church, we'll draw closer to God. But we got to do those kind of things. Amen. We got to have those kind of things. Because relationships are important. It's what God created us to have. Even the body of Christ, it's not all about one person. It's all about each member of the church. Amen. I mean, that's how the body functions. We all have different gifts. We all have different things we can offer or we can serve God in. And folks, we need to have this. So everything's about friendships, about relationships. But as we close today, remember, as we sing our closing hymn, Jesus will be that friend we all need. And if you don't know the Lord today, I want to ask you to be bold enough, to be brave enough to come down and say, Pastor Tommy, I need to get saved. I want Jesus in my heart. You know, I've often wondered at times if He's there, if He's not there, or I want a friend in Jesus. And you can have that today. You can have a friend in Jesus. Amen. So let's stand as we sing our closing hymn.
His name is wonderful.
His name is wonderful. His name is